Hello kids, this is Mr. Whistler with your video lesson of the day, and today we're going to be talking about the Battle of Bunker Hill, or the battle where the commander said, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." We have a couple of vocab words today, and our first one is loyalist. Now, a loyalist, they were those who chose to stay with Britain. 8th grade, the people who did not want freedom or did not want to fight for freedom. And the significance, they sometimes worked as spies for the British and were almost always shunned by the patriots. The other word is patriot, and the official is people determined to fight the British until independence was won, the people who wanted to be free. And they were fighting the strongest army in the world and could lose everything if they lost. Now, before we go any further into the PowerPoint, I want to talk a little bit about war and battles. When you are fighting in a war, you're fighting in a battle, especially back in these days, it is a huge advantage to have the higher ground. It's hard to fight your way uphill. Imagine you guys that have climbed Sea Hill. It's kind of steep up there, and imagine you have to fight somebody up there. Would you want to be above them on the hill or below them on the hill? I think you can say safely that you would want to be above them, because anybody who's climbed it can see how easy it would be to push someone off. So on top of that, once you got up on top of the hill, what can you see? When you're on top of Sea Hill, you can see the entire city. So if you could get some cannon up there and some troops with guns, it's a pretty strong position, and you could blast things and you could see people coming. So just keep that in mind. The Battle of Bunker Hill on June 16, 1775, 1,200 militia under the command of Colonel William Prescott set up fortifications across the harbor from Boston. Here's Boston, and here is across the harbor. And they set up fortifications on Breed's Hill and Bunker Hill. Now, the British down below knew the advantage that the Americans had, and they decided to attack. Now, before the British got over here, they were thinking that this was going to be easy. They were thinking that they were going to be fighting against farmers and storekeepers and teachers and shop clerks and blacksmiths, and they were the strongest army in the world, and they thought it would take a couple of weeks to win this thing, and then they'd be on their way back to England. So that was kind of the mindset of the British, especially before this battle. So the British were going to take these hills, and most of the fighting actually took place on Breed's Hill. So the British assembled at the bottom of Breed's Hill, and Prescott, their commander, because of limited gunpowder and ammo, warned his troops, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." Now, the reason he said that was because these guns back in those days weren't very accurate, and he did not want to waste one bullet, so he wanted to make sure the enemy was close enough that they would hit them. So the British attacked, and they charged the hill. And when they got close enough, the Americans opened fire and blasted them, and a bunch of them fell dead, and it forced the British to retreat. So the Redcoats charged again, and the exact same thing happened. They waited till they got close enough, they shot them, a bunch of them fell dead, and the British had to retreat and regroup. Well, they tried it a third time, and the exact same thing happened. A bunch of the British fell dead, and the British had to retreat and regroup. After the third charge, the Americans looked down at the hill, and there was over 1,000 British soldiers laying there dead. But the problems the American had was that they had run out of bullets and gunpowder, so they had to leave. So the Americans didn't lose anywhere near the amount of soldiers that the British did. So, who won the battle? Well, the rule in war is whoever holds the ground wins the battle. It doesn't really matter how many people were killed in the battle. It matters who achieved their objective. And the British objective was to take the hill, and the American objective was to hold the hill, and the Americans ran out of supplies, so they had to leave. So the British win the Battle of Bunker Hill. But it was at a heavy cost because they lost 1,000 soldiers. Okay, the historical significance of Bunker Hill are two things. The British learned something and the Americans learned something. The British learned that it was not going to be as easy as they thought to defeat the Americans. And they knew this because of all the people they lost. The Americans learned that they were going to need more training and supplies if they were going to have any chance at defeating the British. So, choosing sides. As the colonists heard about these battles, they faced a major decision. Do they become patriots? Do they join the rebels and become patriots? Or do they remain loyal to Britain and stay loyalists? Okay, for them, the loyalists did not think unfair taxes was a good enough reason to go to war. Another reason colonists stayed loyal to Britain was because if they were office holders or they had some type of job for the British government, they would lose their jobs. How would they support themselves? And some of the people lived in remote locations, and they were really no part of the rebellion, so it really didn't affect them that much, so they just chose to stay loyal to Britain. And a lot of people thought that the British might win. People became patriots because they were tired of their rights being violated. Remember, the Quartering Act, they hated the British soldiers in their homes. They didn't have representation, and they wanted it. They just wanted to be free from Britain and start their own country. So that's the Battle of Bunker Hill, and do your note taker and do your evidence questions.